Hello, fourth graders. We are going to continue to look at decimals and fractions this week. Our focus tomorrow in class is going to be on comparing and ordering fractions. So we're going to be really looking at the place value of fractions, just like when we compare and order numbers. So just like when, let's say, we look at the number 92 or 78, when we were to compare those, we're using our greater than, less than, or equal to. And we want to look at the biggest place value that we have there. And in this case, our biggest place value is the tens. And I can look and see that 9 tenths is greater than 7 tenths, or 90 is greater than 70. If they were the same, then I would have to go to the ones place. But just because 78 has more ones doesn't mean that it's a larger number. So if we take a peek with decimals, it's very similar. So let's say I have 92 hundredths and 78 hundredths, just like we just talked about. So looking here, I'm going to start with my biggest place value. We're used to thinking hundredths is bigger than tenths, but when we're working with decimals, using our visuals, tenths are greater than decimals. Or tenths are greater than hundreds, sorry. So I'm going to look at that first place value and compare them. 9 tenths or 7 tenths, I can see 9 tenths is greater. Now, sometimes, let's look at this one. 153 thousandths and 158 thousandths. I'm going to start in my biggest place value again. Starting in the tenths, I see they're the same. Moving to the hundreds, they're still the same. When I move to the thousandths, that's where I get something different, and I'm choosing the bigger number. I see 8 is bigger than 3. So 158 thousandths is greater than 153rd. The other tricky thing when we're comparing decimals is when they have a number out front. And just like what I was talking about earlier, you always start in your biggest place value. So when I look at my two numbers, I have 35 and 9 tenths, or 4 and 32 hundredths. I'm going to start with my biggest. The tenths place value here, this 30 represents 30. When I look here, it doesn't have anything in the tenths. So right away, 35 and 9 tenths is greater. The only last tricky thing we're going to look at before we get lots of practice tomorrow in class is this. Now, we've talked a little bit about this in class. We've talked about how you have many different names for that decimal. But we're going to start with thinking that can be 700 thousandths, that can be 700 or 70 hundredths, or 7 tenths. And this one over here is 7 tenths. Remember, we talked about how I could add as many zeros as I want after the number of the place value you say. So when I do that, I can see that these two are equal. They're equivalent. So if I erase those zeros, I can see that 7 tenths is the same as 700 thousandths. It's also the same as 70th hundredths. They're all the same. So we're going to get some more practice with this in class tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you, and have a good night.